Welcome and step into the minds of addiction and recovery. Hello, I'm your host, Brett C. It is an honor to bring into light one of the darkest aspects of our society, addiction. With 20 years of active addiction and 20 years of sobriety, I hope to bring together all listeners on a journey of inspiration and education. With my co-hosts Jared F. and Rich J., we will be sharing our experience, strength, and hope for all listeners to enjoy and have fun with. Now, F3 Recovery brings you the Super Sober Podcast. Welcome to the 16th episode of the Super Sober Podcast. Thanks for tuning in and listening on all the platforms and on YouTube. We have another awesome guest on the Super Sober Podcast. You don't want to miss this one for sure, just like all the rest of them. If you haven't checked out all the other podcasts yet, and your first new time listening or watching on the Super Sober Podcast, check out the foundational stuff from episodes 1 through 10. We got a whole platform on growing situation here. I just want to let you know I'm your host. My name is Brett C. My sobriety date is 4/21/03. I'm an RN with a BSN. I've been working in hospitals for 18 years, coming up on 10 years working with chemical dependency in this unbelievable, convoluted, crazy disease of addiction. And we got our two co-hosts, originals, back today. I want to thank everybody for just helping out with the Super Sober Podcast. And we'll go off to our left here with Rich.
Hi, everyone. My name is Rich. My recovery date's October 5th, 2013. For the last 10 years, I've been working in chemical dependency. But recently I became a nurse. So right now I'm working as I'm working as a nurse in an ER, and that's what I'm doing right now. So
my boy.
Bam.
Morning. My name is Jared F. My sobriety date is the 4th of July, 2015. Good to be back and good to have our guest Sarah with us today.
And what's your profession?
Oh yeah, sorry. I'm a KDAC 2, an internationally certified drug and alcohol counselor, and I work in a busy hospital-based acute medical detox in Orange County.
And then go ahead and meet our guest, Miss Sarah. Go ahead and introduce yourself and your accolades.
Yeah, good morning, good afternoon. I'm Sarah. My sobriety date is September 21st, 2020. I'm a U.S. Army vet. I work during the day in software sales. So I'm a woman in tech, but my passion and where I spend most of my time, I'm a certified meditation instructor, a breathwork coach and facilitator, and I'm completing my certificate in integrative somatic trauma therapy.
Nice. Wow. Here we go. Another certified breathwork facilitator, another person dealing with helping people in trauma. And then alluding towards the end, we're going to be sharing her platform. She has a nonprofit organization. She worked for the military. She was an interrogator, people, in Afghanistan and Iraq. Well, this is going to be super interesting. And it's not just by chance. This is our second breathwork facilitator. We had Dr. Allen on for episode 13 and 14. Man, you two got to connect. It's pretty crazy what's going on here. And so let's just go ahead and get right into it, and go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us like what it was and how it was going on. And a little bit alluding to that Jared and Sarah have known each other since they grew up together.
Yeah. Yep. Sarah is the little sister of my one of my best friends growing up, James, and haven't seen her. We were just going over before the podcast. We haven't seen each other in years, but as you'll hear, recovery has a kind of a neat way of bringing people back together, and you know, without any thought or anything like that involved. And super cool to have you on here.
Yeah. Oh, it's great to be in. I can't believe it's like, I just looked at the year. It's 2024. So if the last time I saw you was really in Maui, that was 25 years ago, which is just to think about what has happened in those 25 years is absolutely incredible. So yeah, just a quick little overview of what it was and where it got me to and what it is like now. And please feel free to interject at any time. But kind of the consolidated version, I'm the youngest of 4 kids. I like to say I kind of grew up with a chip on my shoulder. I was very sick as a child. I lost my hearing and had to spend 6 years in speech therapy. And we spent a little bit of time homeless. There's a lot of financial insecurity and food insecurity early on. But one thing I learned through all of that is that we can quickly take ourselves anywhere we want to be through our imagination. And that kind of becomes a big part of my story later on, is that anywhere I was, I could put myself somewhere else. And it didn't matter how nasty it was or how crappy it was. If I closed my eyes, I'm suddenly the fanciest person in a room sipping a martini. And it was all through that process of imagination and just helping me escape wherever I was. Growing up, partying was fun in Northern California. I mean, we had a lot of river parties, a lot of parties at my house, and it was a good time. I think I always kind of drank a little bit more than everybody else. Most people would just have a good time, and I'd always like to take it a few steps more. But I'd say it didn't really become a problem for me. And I think this is just proof that this is really a progressive disease until later in life. I went off to Iraq, and when I came back from Iraq, there was just so much stuff that had not been processed, so much stuff that I had seen, I had heard, I had been part of. And literally, guys, within the moment, like the matter of 24 hours, one moment I was on a convoy in Iraq, headed to the Baghdad airport to get out. And within 24 hours, I was released on the streets in Seoul, Korea with the task force that I had been with. And we were just back in Korea where our base was. And everyone's like, welcome home. And it's like, how, and for the mind, and that might seem like a simple thing, but because of all the chemical changes and all the regulation that's happening, like one moment I'm blowing, like we're getting attacked. And the next, it's just like, soju party central, you can do anything you want. And because of that, I didn't have a chance to really process. I didn't know how to process, and I wasn't ready to process. And I quickly learned, along with others in my task force, that the easiest way to escape was to just get drunk. And drinking quickly became medicinal, where we would go out, and it wasn't a matter of let's go have fun. It was with a purpose. How quickly can I escape the way that I'm feeling? And we're going to drink with a purpose. I like to say that the military, I love my time in the military. I wouldn't change it for anything, but it's kind of like the major leagues for drinking. Yeah. And I think I think as alcoholic, I identify as an alcoholic. I think anywhere I go, I'll find the people who drink like me. But in the military, man, we would like tie it on. We'd go all night. You'd get 4 or 5 hours of sleep and then wake up and run 6 miles. And now that just like, that makes my body cringe just thinking about it. But yeah, so it quickly became an escape, but it was still something that I could balance. And again, that progressiveness of this disease really comes in, and I don't want to spend too much time going through it, but if we fast forward a few years, I found myself with 2 kids right after a divorce, and suddenly I had no idea who I was. Who am I when I'm not a wife? Like, what does that mean for my role as a woman? Who am I when my kids are with their dad? You know, am I still a mom? And I couldn't deal with that. And so what did I do? I went quickly to drinking, and I went to a very, very solid, very quick downward spiral over the course of about 4.5 years, where life became the most arduous task, and nothing was fun anymore. Everything had become a chore. And there's pictures of that time where it looked fun, but that was the work for me, right? Is there was this face that I felt like I had to put on, I had to maintain. I still had a professional career. And so one moment I'm doing all these things, and as soon as I could take that off, I was back to the races. And inside through all of that, I was hurting, I was alone, I was very, very angry. And that process just got really exhausting, you know, to put all of my energy into, I'm going to clean up and I'm going to pull it all together for just a few hours. And then I'm going to go create a ruckus. And I really did create a ruckus. And I would go on these multi-day binges and come back and try to figure out what are all the pieces that fell apart? How do I put these back together? And then I'd swear I'm going to be clean. And I would try to live nice and clean. And after 4 days, I'd feel like, okay, I did a good job. It's time to celebrate that I had done well and off the races I was again. And ultimately where that got to is a place of such desperation, such just anxiety, so much sadness that I thought that my kids would understand if I went to bed and never woke up. And this is like the disease, and this is ultimate mental illness, to get to a point where I justified in my head that if I took my own life tonight, my kids would understand because mommy's just tired. And now I look at my kids and I'm like, I cannot imagine that I was willing to give up a day with them. And how would they ever have understood that? They wouldn't have. But unless somebody has gone through that, it is so hard to understand that level of sheer exhaustion where I couldn't keep doing it. But at the time, the idea of getting clean was not even, I couldn't even fathom that. And ultimately, this is kind of a cool turning point for me. I found myself one morning, it was around 5 a.m. on a Monday morning. My kids were going to be coming back to me around 8 o'clock that morning. It was during COVID. So we were like switching houses every day so they could get some kind of homeschool, which really just meant I got to drink all day while they stared at their iPads. But I woke up around 5 a.m. from a blackout. And this was the state of my life. Like I wake up from this complete blackout. And I had this checklist because I was a professional at this point. So I had this checklist of like, okay, check the bed next to me. The bed is empty. Okay, that's one point. I got my clothes on. That's another point. I have my cell phone. We're on a good, I got my debit card, like, cool. And for me, that was like almost a sigh of relief. Like, oh, whatever happened last night, who cares? Because I'm home, I'm alone, I'm in bed, I got my phone, I got my debit card. Like I'm winning at life right now. And so I did what any good alcoholic would do. I went downstairs, I got a bottle of champagne and took it up to my bathtub to celebrate waking up from a blackout in my own house. And so this is like 5 a.m. on a Monday morning. I'm in a bathtub just drinking a bottle because in my mind, I'm a rock star. My mind likes to go very larger than life. And like, that's what rock stars would do. And quickly, as soon as I started drinking, that blackout came right back. And all of the unprocessed alcohol was just like tearing through my system. And I don't really remember much of the next 5 hours, but a very strong presence. Some people call it their knowing. Some people call it the voice of their higher power. Call it what you will, but this very strong presence told me to Google AA and to get to a meeting, which is crazy. I didn't even know that AA was on Google, but there it was. 6 a.m. got into a recovery meeting, and that was the beginning for me. And that was what I needed. And it's been 3.5 years later, and I'm extremely thankful that for whatever reason that voice told me to get on a meeting of AA that morning.
That's amazing. That's a whole bunch of information right into the process. And a lot of it is being processed that I could tell from a woman that does have a solid foundation in recovery, right? To look back on all of that. So let's rewind a little bit. And how old were you when you first started drinking? And of course, your brother was an addict and alcoholic. And you were saying that your father is also in recovery, that I'm just finding out too, right? And it was go ahead.
Well, they say it's family, right? It's hereditary, and well, I'm not a lie. That definitely shows up in our family. I probably had my first drink. The first drink I can remember, I should say, was in 7th grade, and we had a bunch of girls sleeping over at my house, and for whatever reason, we thought it would be a good idea to try and like mix a beer in a blender with frozen fruit, like we were making a margarita or something, but we had no idea. It was some like super nasty beer. We thought we were so cool. Like, so yeah, that was the first drink that I can remember was that. There was likely a sip here or there, I don't know, but that was the moment where I felt larger than life, having this beer smoothie. Like, who does that? I don't know. When you're in 7th grade trying to sneak booze, I think you'll do anything. So
you didn't have any spurring on from, I guess your brother's older than you. You said you had like 3 siblings.
Yeah, I'm the youngest of 4. And so I don't want to speak for my brother. He is not in our program. I don't know if he identifies as anything. But at that time, no, not really. It was when we got within the next year or so, about the time I got into 8th grade, he got into high school. We were about 16 months apart. All bets were off. I am very fortunate that my brother has and always will be one of my best friends. And so seeing him getting to do things is like, here I come. And so I wanted to follow very closely. And that's not to put any blame on him at all, but it opened doors to new places. And by the time I started high school, he already knew kind of everybody. He knew the scene, and together off we went. And it was a lot of fun until it was not. And that happened very quickly.
And is the same school that you went to, Jared?
Well, yeah, I had my alcoholism had worked me out of Santa Rosa by the end of 9th grade. So, well, they built a skate park right across the street, and I was already a derelict. So, as I've talked about on the podcast, I spent all my days at the skate park getting smashed. And
Not a lot of good things happen at skate parks.
not a lot. Not a lot. At
Who
all.
built a skate park right across from a high school?
Yeah, I don't know.
I didn't really think that
Genius.
was through.
Yeah, that place was gnarly. So yeah, her brother, after I moved up to Tahoe, he would come up every once in a while, and we'd continue the party, but just up in Tahoe, and yeah. But James is, I never looked at him. In fact, when I picked up my 2-year chip after I got sober in 2005. Him and Dad, Bill, drove all the way down here to see me get my 2-year chip. And
awesome.
as far as I know, I've lost touch with James largely, but I've talked to him a few times, and I mean, by all rights, seems to be doing amazing in his life. So,
Sweet.
miss that guy.
Yeah.
And Bill is one of our biggest fans. So,
Yeah, he loves you guys.
Yeah.
We all do.
Amazing.
Much
Hi,
love
Bill.
from the Patterson
Nice to meet
family.
you.
do you remember, just real quick here? I don't know if you were there or not, but James, your dad had some apple pie, and he had this hot sauce, Jamaican Hellfire sauce. And James and I lifted up the ice cream and put the Hellfire sauce on it, and then put the ice cream back on top. Were you there for that?
I don't recall that specific event, but messing with food was something that happened all the time in our household. And so there's a reason I have trust issues. You can go to the bathroom and come back and eat your dinner. Like there was hot sauce or pure vinegar or something just waiting for you. You never knew what you were going to find.
Yeah. Never forget it. Damn it, James, your dad.
No, but James is doing so good. He's one of those people, sometimes I wish that I could be like him. Like he went through his party stage and he really, he did his own thing, but now he's just like this stellar man. And I would call him a normal social drinker. He's an amazing father. He's a great husband to his wife. And it's incredible to see that. I can't associate with that because I can't have a beer with dinner without immediately going all in. But he was a big part of helping me get sober. And the love that he showed me as I was I like to say I kind of hit my bottom and then just drugged along for a while. And he would show me so much love, but would constantly remind me that I was worth more. And he would see me get into situations, and we won't go into all those, but he would see me get into these situations. And he was like, "Sarah, what are you doing with that person? Like, they do not deserve your time, your energy. You are better than all of this." And it took me a while to find what he was talking about, but I'm so thankful. He was actually the second person I called once I finally decided, I got to get sober. And the first person I called was one of my best friends from the military, and she was amazing. And then when I called my brother, because I just needed somebody in my family to support me and to know this, what I thought was a big secret. And it turned out everybody knew. And the first thing he said to me is "I love you, little sis. What do you need? Whatever you need." And I guess he thought I needed to get to rehab, which I would have loved to have gone to. COVID made that near impossible, but his love and support has been amazing through this entire thing. I actually get to see him in about 2 weeks. So I'm super excited for that.
Nice. Give him a big hug for me, please.
I will indeed.
All right. So I want to jump into real quick here. What has your experience been getting sober, walking into the rooms? What did you find that allowed you to go from that spot that you've been describing to the person that we're talking to today?
Yeah. So I would say the first thing for me, and I think one of the reasons I kind of shied away from getting sober is I thought to admit that I had a problem, that meant that I had to look a certain way, that I had to be homeless under a bridge, drinking out of a bag every day. And for all external purposes, my life still looked pretty together, right? I hadn't lost custody of my kids yet. I still had a car. I hadn't lost my job yet. All of those things could happen. But I felt like I didn't need help because I didn't look like what I thought somebody who had a problem would look like. And what was incredible for me is when I got into the rooms, and for me, it started all on Zoom. There wasn't anything in person. I think it was about a month before I got to go to my first like in-person meeting. And it was kind of like secret behind a building. And I thought there was going to be a secret handshake to get it. There wasn't any of that. But what I found to be really incredible was to see that we come from all walks of life, and to be able to find other, especially the women. I feel very strongly that the women stick with the women, men stick with the men. I love everybody, but the support we get from our groups is just incredible. But to find other women who were moms, to find other women who were still professionals, to find other women who had done some of the things that I did, because I thought those things were so unforgivable. And I was the most horrible person on earth because I had done those things. And then to see that, like, no, other people have done these things too. And that doesn't make it right. It doesn't make it okay. But to know that I'm not alone, that was a game changer. So I think getting connected early on was huge. And then I picked up a sponsor right away, and she got into action very quickly. And we started working the 12 steps, and she made me get very honest, which was very difficult. I did my 5th step in Santa Cruz, like right on the beach. And it was, so it was good. But I think getting connected and then getting straight into the program and facing my fears has been another big thing. I was so afraid coming into this program. And this is just another thing about this, our addictions and what our mind does to us. Here I am living like this horrible existence, wanting to die and actively trying to end my life. And yet with all of that, I still didn't want to give up drinking because I was afraid of what it was going to look like on the other side. Like, what sense does that make? Like, I'm ready to die, but I don't want to give up drinking because I don't know for example, how will I ever travel? I'm an avid traveler. And I was so afraid, like, I will never be able to travel again. But yeah, just staying focused one day at a time. And that's probably some of the best advice that my sponsor gave me early on, because I was starting to worry about, like, how am I going to go to my daughter's wedding? And she's like, girl, your daughter is like 4 years old or 8 years old at the time. Why are you planning her wedding? I'm like, I don't know. But she's like, so just stay in today. Just stay today. Like, let's focus on today. And and I have to remind myself of that still. Like, that's been a game changer.
Nice. All right. So what's it looking like for you spiritually today? How did you get there?
To my spiritual fitness?
Where you're at today.
Oh, I love that. That was that's a great question. I should have put some more thought into that ahead of time. I think the biggest thing is having the freedom to what?
I said on the spot.
On the spot. I think having the freedom to define that for myself. I grew up in a very strict religious household, which is kind of funny. Jared, I don't know if you remember in high school what we used to do with some of the back pages from the Bible when we'd run out of rolling papers.
Yeah. Might remember.
I've done that.
We'll edit that out. But I grew up in a very strict religious household. We weren't allowed to ask questions. I wasn't allowed to formulate opinions. It was just forced. And so that was kind of a showstopper for me when I first got into this program. Like, what is all this, like, God, spirituality? What does this all mean? And to be told, very early on in that second in step 2, to find a power greater than ourselves. And when we actually work these steps in the order in which they're written, it's incredible. Because on step 2, they're not even saying to find a higher power. Like, they know people are probably they knew people were going to have a hard time with this. So it's not find a higher power. It's just find a power greater than ourselves. And so what can that look like? That power is, what makes the waves crash. crash. And it doesn't matter how hard I go and I stand in the surf. If I try to stop the wave, I'm not going to stop the wave because there is a power that is greater than me. I feel that power when I walk into a room of other women and we just give each other a hug. If you have really, really hugged somebody, you know that there is power in that hug. There's a reason why we go to these meetings and when we call some of these specialists, because we have hope that they know what it's going to take. And we know that they're going to be able to fix it. Just like I wouldn't take my blender to my car mechanic. I'm not going to take my addiction just to other addicts to solve. I'm going to take it to people who are in a program, who are working and who have a solution. And so having all of that freedom and being able to ease into it has opened to a place where I fully believe that there is a higher power. I don't have names for it. I don't think I have to. And that's okay. Giving myself the permission, like I don't have to have a name, but I know that there is something bigger than me that has saved my butt time and time again. If it was just luck that got me through every deadly situation I put myself in, whether that was drinking to blackouts in incredible places and really, really yucky places and still being alive, like how I am not dead in a dumpster someday is beyond me. And the only thing I know is that my choices are I'm either the luckiest woman in the earth. I haven't won the lottery yet, so I don't think that's true. So more likely it's that there's a higher power that's with me. And when I take a moment and I just pause and I connect with that higher power, it changes everything. I can feel it. And I realize that was in me all along, but I numbed it. I drank over it. I put drugs over it and I didn't want to listen. And now I get to connect with that and I get to make it my own. And it's a very beautiful thing.
Right on. Yeah. And I asked that because that's what I recall. Growing up was a very religious environment for you guys. And, yeah, well said. So another thing I wanted to kind of touch on here and I want to make sure we allow for plenty of time to talk about this is you've had quite the history, both in, childhood, family environment, into a gnarly career, bearing witness to a lot of pretty gnarly stuff and acquired trauma. And then substance use to cope, getting sober, entering 12-step program. At some point, and that's similar for most people that are in the program. It's kind of a similar timeline usually. Steps are amazing at uncovering a lot of things and also amazing at providing some solution and some sense of relief. But oftentimes it doesn't go far enough to truly address a lot of the things like trauma, anxiety, a lot of the underlying mental health stuff. And you've recently embarked on a pretty amazing mission, and I want to make sure you have plenty of time to talk about this. So can you tell us a little bit about what you're currently working on?
Yeah, well, just to kind of piggyback on some of those comments, I think you really nailed it. The 12 steps, there is so much strength and wisdom, and there's so much to get us going. But there is, for a lot of us, stuff that is much, much deeper. And I'm very thankful that, the 12 steps program really encourage people to seek more help as needed, because there are things that we're just not able to support in the rooms, and that's okay. So for me, what that's looked like has gone on through my own kind of like discovery process of, in addition to these 12 steps. And as I'm getting sober and all of this stuff is coming up, what is it that I can, how can I go deeper? How can I solve and work through some of these things that are really deep inside me? And a lot of that's just like you had mentioned, trauma from childhood, from being in combat and amongst other things. And so what that looks like now is I got into meditation initially. So I started studying under Deepak Chopra, which was really, really difficult to just sit. Before we can even get to meditate, we got to sit down, and I can't sit because I got to constantly always be going. And so learning to just to sit and to be uncomfortable. And again, now we start to pull on some of the 12-step principles is acceptance. I got to accept that I'm uncomfortable, and that's okay. And it's okay to feel these things. Then my journey continued. I got into transformational breath work, and that was kind of a really neat thing. I had hit a part of my kind of healing journey where my PTSD was really coming back, and I was doing all the right things. I wasn't drinking. I was finally taking my medication as it was prescribed because I was never doing that before. And so I thought that all of my PTSD would go away, but it doesn't just go away. No. And I found myself in a very, very deep, dark spot again. Wow. And I wanted help, and I reached out to the VA. And this is not to diss the VA at all. I know that they're extremely bogged down, but I reached out to the VA to ask for help, and they said it would take 3 months for me to get seen. And I was like, guys, I don't think you're hearing me. I do not have 3 months. Like, I need help now. And they said that my only solution at the time was to go to the emergency room. I was like, I can't go to the emergency room. I have these 2 kids. And if I just show up to the emergency room, they're going to take my kids away. And like so anyways, fast forward later that night, I went down like the infamous Facebook rabbit hole where I was just like clicking on this and looking at reels. And somehow at midnight, I ended up on this breathwork journey being led by a guy named Brian Kelly out of Bali. And he introduced breathwork as a way to start to identify and release some of your trauma without having to talk about it. And I was like, this is incredible, because every time I go for talk therapy, we got to talk about it. And I've lived it. I still have nightmares about it. I don't want to talk about it. So I sat through this breathwork journey and participated. And when I got done with that first 90-minute session, I knew that something had changed. I went to bed that night, and that was the first night I had slept, and like really slept in probably months. And so I knew right away I wanted to learn more so that I could help myself. But through that process, I've learned that this is something that's not just for me, it's for everybody. And so as I got certified, I started taking it to initially women in recovery. And so there's a lot of women in the programs I'm in where they come over and we'll do breathwork journeys with them just to help them identify some of the things that's really stuck, that's deep down inside that we've either pushed down or we're not even aware of, and be able to allow our bodies to bring that up in a very safe way and to work through the responses that had started and were first activated when those events happened, but then we had to push them down. So during breathwork, we find a way to be able to safely work through those things, let those reactions and those chemical responses complete themselves so that we can move forward. And so I love the women in my community. They've been kind of my test dummies. I bring them over all the time. Like, guys, we're going to try some of this and some of that. And so fast forward a bit more, in January of this year, started a nonprofit, Veterans Breath Guide, where we take both trauma education, because I think it's really important for us to heal from anything, whether that's addiction, alcoholism, trauma. We have to understand what it is, and we have to understand in very real terms what those things are. So there's trauma education where we explain what the body does, all those neurochemical responses that are happening, and how that really forms and sits in our body. And then we go through transformational breath work to start to release some of that trauma that's been stuck and deep down. And at the same time, teaching somatic experiencing so that we can start to identify sensations as they're happening and begin to release them before they settle. Because we want to make sure, we're not adding more. Just like we don't want to have to go back and take another 4-step that's big and lengthy. Well, let's start working our 10th step every day and make sure that we're working through these things. Just like we would do that with our program, we do that with our mental health as well. So it's really incredible. We're actually, I'm heads down working away this weekend because I've been doing this in person, but this weekend we are in the final step of launching an online platform. So now veterans anywhere can come on, they can go through a series of getting the education, building some of the self-regulating tools, as well as going through some breathwork journeys to start to get into the program. So it's pretty neat. There's a little spoiler alert. A lot of the principles and the ideas of the 12 steps of recovery are kind of baked into that program that we're teaching, because the things that we learn in 12 steps, they're so applicable to everything that we do in life. So it's been a labor of love. It's been incredible, but I'm really excited to continue to share this with other people.
So rad.
Yeah, that's
strong
super
work.
Amazing. That's and so fast, and we got this strong pandemic sobriety here. I know so many people that got sober during the pandemic and started on Zoom or continued with the program and the work. But we're going to take a quick pause right here. I just wanted to go to our sponsor really quick here for a couple minutes. That's His House New Creation out there. We're just going to do a little bit of business. And that number, if anybody needs help out there, that number is 877-868-5730. That number again is 877-868-5730. If you need help, anybody needs help, you can call His House New Creation out here. And that is on episode number 12 with Glenn Swanson. You can see him and his whole story and behind the scenes of what happens in treatment centers and how we do it. So we'll just take a quick minute to go to that, and then we'll be back.
Welcome to the place where it all began, the 9th Street House. Our maiden journey into hope and recovery for His House New Creation treatment centers since 1994. Right next door, the 9th Street apartment building stands as a testament to our commitment to providing comfortable and safe spaces for recovery. And on the other side, nestled amidst nature's best, our Palm House offers a tranquil haven to begin the path to sobriety. You'll find 12 unique His House New Creation treatment centers across Southern California. Just as recovery encompasses inner and outer transformation, our facilities mirror this philosophy. The external beauty of our homes reflect the nurturing and healing environments you'll discover within. These are just glimpses of the harmonious spaces where we support your journey to recovery. Our state-licensed and highly accredited programs echo this sentiment. We know that successful addiction treatment is more than skin deep. It requires a robust plan that heals the mind, strengthens the body, and nourishes the soul. We select the best facility to cater to your unique needs, providing focused, compassionate care that sets you firmly on the path to sobriety and hope. Welcome to His House New Creation Treatment Centers, where the journey to a healthier you begins. Your recovery begins here with us.
All right, we're back. Just did a little quick pause right there. Didn't even get a chance to take a sip of coffee or anything like that. So I love it. Did anybody else have any questions for Sarah? This is covering a lot of ground. I mean, in 3.5 years, you just healed so much, and it just shows the power of the program. And then what we've been alluding, if anybody hasn't seen the previous 15 podcasts, so much of her being on here is just, it can't just be odd. It has to be God. I mean, because we have talked so much about it, right, Rich and Jared, over these podcasts, and how much more that we got this simple foundation of the 12 steps. And the 12 step was so amazingly insightful when they wrote it in there that you might need extra help. And here we are at a certain point, if anybody out there, like I have some other friends that are veterans that are struggling with PTSD, and so many people out there. And then now we have these solution areas, and it just seems to be everywhere, of people doing the breath work, the deep state meditations, and across, we've talked about it so many times. Do you have any questions for her, Rich, or anything?
I do, yeah. So it sounds like your recovery journey started in California, right?
That's correct.
Okay. So I feel like there's a lot of people moving right now. Just like the last few years, it seems like people are moving all over the place. A lot of people are moving out of California. So I got a question for what was it like for you to move somewhere else and to replant those roots of recovery in a different place? Because I think that's important for people to know how to do, because I think it's one thing to come into the rooms completely desperate and raise your hand as a newcomer, but to go somewhere else and to walk in almost as a newcomer, except you're not a newcomer, but you're new to all these people. How did you go about that? And was it hard for you, or just curious?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the process actually started before I moved. So because there's still so many things on Zoom, while I was in California, I knew I was moving to Charlotte. I started dialing into meetings all throughout Charlotte, just so, and the time zones were really, really wonky since Charlotte's 3 hours ahead, but I was getting up at like 4:00 in the morning in California to be on 7 a.m. meetings, just so I could start to get an idea of what's what and what's going on. When I came out here in person, I will say, and it is different not being, brand new. And I was still very young in sobriety, still very early. I'm still very, very early in sobriety. But coming into these rooms where you don't know people, but you're not picking up a white chip. So like you may not be noticed. And in the beginning, I'll tell you, I started to form a little bit of a resentment because I thought I'm showing up in these rooms. I'm a new face. Why aren't people inviting me to coffee? Like, isn't that what we're supposed to do afterwards? And so then I was hopping around a meeting and hopping around meetings. And I still had my sponsor in California at the time. She's like, Sarah, one, you need to keep your butt in a seat somewhere. If you're hopping around every single meeting, you're never, going to be remembered anywhere. But two, I had been waiting for somebody to invite me in versus inviting myself in and giving myself the permission to be invited in. And once that was pointed out to me, I went to a meeting later that evening. And as soon as the meeting was done, I just got up and started talking to people. It was like, hey, I'm new. And as soon as you tell people you're new somewhere, like at least out here, they're like, okay, let's go to coffee. But, so I think that was a big thing for me, is to not wait for somebody to come introduce themselves to me, but to step up and introduce myself to other people. And, and also to start organizing stuff right away. If I want to go out to coffee, then say that, hey, I want to grab a coffee, or it's Friday night, I don't have my kids, let's go watch some music somewhere, or grab ice cream, whatever it is. And as soon as I throw that out, it's like, oh, there's other people who want to do something too. Okay. And now we have community. And so it was a little bit of a struggle at first, but I think giving myself that permission, that was a huge game changer for me. And it helped me build my community really quickly. I couldn't imagine moving cross country and not having community, because it's hard. Luckily in recovery, we kind of have these built-in communities all over. And if we give ourselves the permission to be a part of that, it can be a beautiful thing.
Awesome.
What a great question. Insightful situation for a lot of people I know that do a lot of the moving and everything. And it kind of makes me think about the prayer of St. Francis. It's like, oh, we want to be loved, but it's like, you got to put it out there. And it's like, nobody knows who you are. And then we get resentful. Like everybody's supposed to just come in and go, oh, new face, and grab you and everything. And it's like, we need to take action wherever we are and insert ourselves into the community. I hear that a lot.
The squeaky wheel gets the grease.
Yeah.
Yeah. The squeaky wheel gets the grease.
Yeah.
Good one.
But I think that's also given me some insight now, being on the other side and having lived in Charlotte for, just over 3 years now, and being really solid in my community, is when people walk in, I have a responsibility in those rooms to not just sit and linger with my own friends, but anytime there's a new face, I need to go say hello and make sure that person feels welcome as well. Because I know what it's like to be the new person walking in and not having that hello as well. So we're really big out here. As soon as the meeting's done, like, you can talk to your friends all day. Go highlight somebody new and say hello. So we got to make sure that we're doing that on our side as well.
It's a really good point.
That's amazing. I kind of wanted to dip back in. I kind of want to get dark a little bit and tell us a little bit about the interrogation situations, maybe, if you would like to talk about this, because I imagine a lot of your PTSD and alluding into the trauma spectrum, which was really big on episodes 13 and 14 and 15, and Jared throwing it out there. It's like, we're all on the trauma spectrum. You can't be alive today on this planet without being on it. And how much of that was alluding, because you went into the military at a very young age. My brother is retired military, and the conversation with my brother is usually like, hey, how was this thing? It's like, oh, we weren't doing anything. And it kind of makes me think about if I told you I'd have to kill you situation. So I understand there's amount of debriefing and things we can't talk about on the other end when we're in certain professional areas. Like would be HIPAA, and I don't even know what they would call military HIPAA, but
classified,
yeah. Super classified stuff.
Super. If I told you I'd have to kill you, classified.
So how much of, I know so many people have come out of the areas that we see a lot of people putting as their main coping skill as becoming professional drinkers in the military, which I remember when my brother first joined, I mean, we were doing so much drinking, but we were already drinking. We were far crazy before he joined it. But how much drinking was going in, and so many people I know that learned how to drink really well in the military. So, I mean, how much of that PTSD and everything was instilled during interrogation of your actual military profession?
Yeah. So I think when we look at interrogation, I mean, there's a lot. So there's actually doing an interrogation, and, you know, I'm sure you've seen movies and what it's highlighted like, but there are things that I have had to say to get people to give us information that we needed that I have a lot of guilt over having said. And it's hard to really put enough weight into that without going into deeper details, which I'll avoid. But some of the things that I've had to say to people, and some of the places that I've had to take them emotionally and break people down. And I get that there was a purpose and we needed that information to save lives. But at the same time, like, that's hard, knowing in my heart the mental distress that I have brought people to, and the things that I have said to people, to women, to children, whoever it might be, to get information. And, you know, so that kind of starts to weigh on you, right? Is all of the guilt that you're feeling with that. Then add in, you know, kind of just doing the job, all the things that you have to see, hear, and be a part of in order to accomplish that mission. So those things start to add up. And then add in being in a war zone, I mean, I spent a year in Iraq, and that's hell on earth. And so, you know, it's kind of crazy when I remember we got the little outpost that we were at, we were constantly taking in incoming mortar fire. And in the beginning, it's like you hear a mortar and you're like, oh crap, get up, put your jacket on and grab your weapon. And then quickly you realize, like, God, but I also need sleep. So like, oh, that one was 50 yards away. I'm going to stay in bed this night. And that just seems kind of strange, like, to get to a point where you're like, there's some gunfire, somebody's shooting some mortars at us, but it's not we're going to just keep sleeping. Wow. So that's pretty intense. There are things that I smelled, and that's a big one for me, is smells. I can manufacture smells based on what I've experienced over there. But all of those things, having experienced that and being in positions where it's like, is this actually the end? And to get into a situation where you think this is my end, and this is how my story ends. And to getting to a point where it's like, it's not just fear, but like you're so close to the end where like you start to get that little dopamine kick, because your body will start to just kind of accept everything that's happening, which is something that happens in animals right before they die. When they're getting hunted by a predator in their last few seconds, they get a big dopamine hit, which is oftentimes where they just kind of roll over and it ends for them. And that's a protection mechanism so that they kind of go into a fluffy light. But that was the same thing. Like, I got to a point where my body had said, this is it. And I am so thankful that wasn't the end, but take all of that and then combat or add into that. There's not time to process. And it's really hard to explain that to people. They're like, well, what do you mean? Like, you got a concussion, you didn't go to the doctor. It's like, who has time to go to the doctor? Like, no, you worry about the person who's bleeding out. Save your concussion for later. Like, we got to keep moving. And so it was a lot. And then take into that coming back. In my unit, we were out of Korea, and just being somewhere where people don't understand. And it's hard. That's one thing I'm so thankful in the rooms of recovery. When you go in, people understand the darkness of where your addiction has taken you. But coming out of a war zone, people don't understand. And it's hard to find that relationship. And so I'm so thankful there's so many communities that are coming together now to help bring that community and association to veterans, so that like you understand what it's like. Because I can say these things and it can seem wow, but until you've been there, like it's just, yeah. So all of that just really compiled. I just had to push it down and keep going. Because one, there's not time to process it. And two, nobody wants to be next to a crybaby, so to speak. And it's like, so you just keep going. And now what I've learned, and one of the things that I encourage people who are still, because I do work with some people who are still in active duty and law enforcement officers, is that when you're coming out of those really high intense missions and your body has started to activate, and oftentimes that's fight or flight, and you're going in and you're, guns blazing, all these things are happening. When you get back into your safe space and you're doing that debrief, go through all the checks and actions that you need to make sure you're just like you would clear your rifle and you'd put away your ammo and you'd complete all your post-mission checks. But then go somewhere and take 15 minutes for yourself so that your body can physically complete that process. Whether that means, yelling, like guttural, like just let out a howl or shake it out. If you watch animals, and we have learned so much by watching animals, they'll go out, they get hunted, and they will be in the fight for their life. As soon as they're safe, they'll go and they'll kind of turn in circles. They'll kind of shake for a few minutes. They'll lie down, take a little rest, and then the next day they're back to it. And that's why we don't see animals with PTSD in the Serengeti. Like, no, these guys are processing those things. So why aren't we doing the same? So I encourage people, and this isn't just for military, law enforcement, anybody, for our first responders. You get out of a nasty, nasty car wreck that you're cleaning up, your body has seen and felt things. Give yourself some time to like process that and do that physically. I like to shake a lot, to shake that energy out, some guttural, and it might seem silly at first. And I know people have a hard time with this. They're like, I'm not just going to dance around. Like, no, do it in private, whatever you need. But once you feel that and you allow yourself to complete that, people recognize like, wow, I'm coming off shift and I feel a little bit better. I'm coming off shift today and I can actually sit down and have dinner with my family instead of still being on. We're giving ourselves permission to kind of turn off that switch, to process that reaction and to just go back to our regular lives. So it's pretty powerful stuff.
You mentioned that, getting over there and then, hearing mortar, and it's like initially your body has the response it should have. And then I had this old timer gave me this term one time for what you described, casual conditioning, right? So it just takes place over time and it eventually gets normalized to the point where it's like so destructive internally. But have you read this book called Tribe by
I was thinking Sebastian about that one.
Junger?
I haven't read that one. I'm going to write that down.
Short read. I think it should be mandatory reading for anybody that identifies with trauma, but specifically PTSD.
I was thinking about the same book.
Really good book. He gave it to me actually, and it's a short read. But
well, let's do. I don't mean to interrupt here. We're coming down towards the end and stuff. Let's just not let you take us through this 30-second process before the end of this, because I just want to let you know we're going to most likely, like on every guest so far, is going to have to be a part 2. So you're already smiling and hopefully saying yes, but let's go through a quick, because we're always about problem, intervention, and evaluation here. We've hit all 3 points, but let's just do another quick 30-second intervention that we were talking about before for our listeners, and then something we can place into our website and something that people can actually start practicing. So why don't you take us through a 30-second intervention process?
I'll kind of talk us through this. I don't know if I can stand up and if my camera's going to get all wonky, but when you're coming out of a situation, and either you're coming out of a situation or you feel that your body's starting to activate again. What that can look like is you're in the supermarket and all of a sudden something catches your eye and you're like, oh, maybe I need to go down the booze aisle because there's something that, and that feeling starts to creep up. It can happen anywhere, anytime, a million different things. But what I like to do is just kind of close my eyes, take a few seconds just to shake it out. Again, that physical movement is really important. So shake out your hands. If you're seated, you can do this seated. And then I take my feet and plant them very firmly on the ground, if that's accessible to you. So both feet flat on the ground. If you're standing, that's kind of the ideal, but I know we're all sitting right now, hands flat on the ground. Then I take my hands, open them up, and just place them at my side. If you're seated, you can just put them open on your palms, or on the tops of your legs a little bit. If you're standing, just open them up to the side. Close your eyes if that feels safe for you. That won't feel safe for everybody, and that's okay. If you don't want to close your eyes, just kind of soften your gaze so that we're not paying attention to just one thing. And then tilt your head up just a little bit. So by tilting our head up, we're going to allow ourselves to start bringing in a little bit more air. We're going to open our airways a little bit. And what we're going to do is we're just going to do some nice inhales through our nose for 4 seconds, and then slowly exhale. You can do that through your mouth or your nose for 6 seconds. And there's not a set, you don't have to do 4, 6, but let's just go ahead and try that. So with your hands out, go ahead, close your eyes, and we'll take a nice big inhale. 1, 2, 3, 4, just a gentle pause. And now a nice slow exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Gentle pause. Let's do that one more time. Inhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. And exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we're doing this kind of briefly today. But if you can do that, and the maximum for this is actually within 5 minutes, science shows that this will immediately start to reduce your adrenaline. It's going to lower your blood pressure. I can't talk. It's going to start to open up your arteries so you can think again a bit more clearly. And you're taking time to pause. That counting thing that we're doing, it's just giving us something to focus on so that I'm not focusing about the person I want to punch or whatever just happened or that bottle that I really want to chug right now or whatever it is. It's giving me something to just focus on. The 4 and the 6, you can take that 4 and 8, whatever you want. Our key there, what we're looking for scientifically is just a longer exhale than our inhale. Anytime we're exhaling longer than we're inhaling, we're alerting our bodies that it is time for us to rest, time to digest, and it's going to take us back to a place of relaxation. So it's something that you can do anywhere and everywhere. It's something and again, don't close your eyes if you're driving your car. But this is something, if I'm stuck in line trying to pick up my kids from school, I don't know if any of y'all have school age kids yet, but picking up carpool line is like, oh, this is a great thing for me when I'm carpool line, just like, okay, let's take a few deep breaths in and let's focus on just a nice slow inhale with a slow exhale. And it's a game changer. We forget to breathe. It's the first thing that we do when we're born. We take a breath. It's the last thing that we do when we leave this world is to exhale that last bit of air. But somewhere along the way, we forget. So take some time. Remember how to breathe today.
This is amazing. So how much time do we have, Solomon, going here?
I would say we have about 5 minutes.
Okay, just wanted to give a quick shout out and everything to her platform, the Veterans Breath Guide. Right on, we'll put up the links into our show notes, and we'll be linking that up also on f3recovery.org. And then we'll have to get you back on. There's so much more to talk about. I know we're kind of wrapping down with everything, but we also wanted to let everybody know that we're on all platforms. Want to let you know we got Notorious JID, the first mascot of recovery here. Notorious Jails, Institutions, and Death. We can be on the website on f3recovery.org. We're even easier to email us. You can go on to the contact page and you can directly email us now. We're also on info@f3recovery.org or info@supersoberpodcast.org. You can email us. You can go on the recovery resources page. And definitely you can go into her Breathwork, Veterans Breathwork Guide on her platform. And that's, and it's going to be ongoing with what you've been doing. You started in January, so you're 6 months in as of basically this month, right?
We're 6 months in. So get on our website. I already offer in person with people along with one-on-one through Zoom. But what we're releasing now is the ability to go online to get some quick trauma education so that you can start to understand what's happening. We introduce some breathwork journeys so you can very safely start to explore some of those things that might be trapped down. And then we teach tools for self-regulation so that moving forward, we don't have to continue to build up. So this is something that we want to make accessible to all veterans. So when you go on our platform, there is a suggested cost to help us pay for overhead. But most importantly, it doesn't matter if you have no money or $1,000. We want everybody to participate. So don't shy away. We have a way for everyone to come in. We've had some gracious sponsors who help make sure that all veterans are able to get access to our platform.
Amen.
I have a question for people that aren't veterans. Do you do sessions for people, or do you have connections for people who do?
That's a great question. Yeah, actually, I own a company that does that for kind of more the general civilian population. So
Awesome.
Go ahead and yeah, look me up. I'd be happy to work with you guys. I also work with other people around the country who bring this to other civilians all over. So
awesome.
Because it's for everybody, right? Because we look too often for drugs, alcohol, pills to change the way we feel. But the answer, it's right here. It's within us. We all have it.
That's amazing. So, any other closing comments or anything?
No, I just want to say,
or?
Sarah, thank you so much for a couple things, for coming on our show, but more important than that, staying alive, getting sober, and the world is definitely a better place. Having you in it and sober with this message. So proud of you.
Well, can I thank you really quick? Because there was this night, sorry, Jared, I'm going to blow you up. There was this night where I had been on a work trip somewhere and I had decided I wasn't going to drink because that's what I would do. I'm like, have all this resolve. I'm not going to drink. Well, of course, that obsession of the mind goes and I allow myself to have a glass, which triggers the allergy. And then I'm full on. And I ended up calling Jared. I don't even know how I got your phone number, but I ended up calling Jared, blacked out in a hotel room bathroom. And it was kind of like the Swiss cheese memory. And I just remember Jared very clearly saying, there is a solution. There is a solution. When you're ready, call me. Once you're not drinking, and we can talk about this. And it took me a long time to get ready and to hear that solution. But for years, as I was going in and out and waking up, just hating where I had been the night before and what I had done to myself, I would just hear, Jared, there's a solution. There's a solution. So, buddy, thank you for being the light of the solution all those years back. I remember specifically which hotel I was in. So thank you for that. And I'm not sad it took me that long to finally heed to the solution. I think I had to go through all of those experiences to get to where I am, but I'm so thankful for it now. So thank you. And thank you to all of you guys for spreading the message. It's incredible.
Well, thank you very much. We appreciate it. And I know we could probably do another 15 minutes just on this. It's got to be addressed. This awesome picture in the background on your wall.
Yeah.
I mean, that thing is amazing. So I don't know if that's like a inner portrait of your inner higher self or something. I don't know, but that thing is awesome.
Isn't that cool? I'll just tell you very briefly, a friend of mine painted that for me when I first was going through my divorce and going into this deep, dark spiral. And we would kind of text in the middle of the night because I wasn't sure who I could talk to about these things. And that's what she painted. So it's me. And if you ever get to see it up close, there's layers upon layers. And that's just all the torture that was going on in my head. Wow. But through it all, even at that dark space, she saw that I had a crown on and that I was meant for greatness. And she put a little warrior paint on because she knew I was getting ready for warrior paint. She knew I was getting ready for a fight. And
that's right.
Yeah. So I love that now. I love that painting.
That's amazing. Well, thank you again so much for being on. I just want to also when we first started talking about guests and going through things, right, Jared, you were right up there. So we're going to be following with you. I hope we can do some follow-ups with you. And thank you for you and your family and all of your service and you helping everybody else out. And we're this big community of helping people. And I want to thank my two co-hosts and definitely give the shout out here to the podcast place here in Long Beach, California. Without Solomon, none of this would have been possible. He is awesome. You can go from zero to podcast in like a day and get it going, and he can plug it in. Right, Solomon?
Yeah, less than a day. In some
anything
cases.
You got to say on this one or anything, Solomon?
Well, she won't be able to see me, but let's see if I can put a camera here for you guys. There, I think. Okay. I'm inspired by your story. I'm inspired by where you're able to go down and then come back and then reach heights. Because a lot of times it's just enough for people to survive, right? And to then say, okay, I'm going to take what I learned and take what I did, and now I'm going to go and try to help others in all of these different types of ways. You know, really looking at the community at large and saying, what are my strengths, and how can I develop strengths to then continue to help people so they don't have to go through that, or find people who went through the journey you went through, and then sort of say, look, I'm going to give you the resources I didn't have. Mm-hmm. And to me, that's always inspiring. It's always amazing. It's something that I strive to do here with, you know, just a simple thing of saying, let's take your idea and let's make it a reality as simply as possible. And so I applaud you for that. You're by far the prettiest woman they've ever brought on too, by the way. I just had to say that. But thank you very much for sharing your story today.
Thank you, son. And I didn't realize you guys are in Long Beach. I was born in Long Beach.
Oh, nice.
Oh, look at that.
Full circle.
Long Beach White Memorial.
All right. Well, we're going to wrap it up here. Thank you again so much, Sarah. And experience, strength, and hope is always here on the Super Sober Podcast. And keep on keeping on. Thank you for listening to the Super Sober Podcast. Go to our website at f3recovery.org. That's F3Recovery, all one word, .org. We're turning fight, flight, and freeze into free form and flowing through practicing the 12 steps and staying accountable to change. Don't forget to keep on keeping on.